Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. The Historical Blueprint of a Great Argead Saga, ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance. By Makāula Nakae. Audio Essay. Episode 18, Queen Eurydice I, the Mother of Kings. Welcome back to Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. I am Makāula Nakae. In our previous episode, we dove deep into dissecting Justin's heavily skewed Athenian propaganda. In his ridiculous theatrical storytelling, the Queen Mother was treated as a caricature, brutally stamped on as a weak, sex-driven character, who only cared about her devotion to a calculating, ambitious regent. But when we audit reality through alternative historical sources and a modern lens, we find a completely different human being. As a queen, a mother, and a woman, Eurydice, I was a person of profound dignity, tactical intelligence, and the iron will required to save her sons and rescue her dynasty from total collapse. Eurydice I of Macedon stands as one of the most important yet fiercely debated figures in the early history of the Argead dynasty. She is clearly recognized as the mother of King Amyntas III's three sons, Alexander II, Perdiccas III, and Philip II, who would eventually father Alexander the Great. All three of her sons rose to the Macedonian throne. She also bore him a daughter, Princess Eurydice. Her life and influence are fundamentally locked into the highly unstable political landscape of 4th century BCE Macedon, a kingdom continually fighting internal coup attempts and brutal external threats from powerful neighbors. Eurydice's background was deeply rooted in the strategic and often contested high country of Lynkestis in Upper Macedonia. She was the daughter of Cyrus, whose precise ethnic origins remain a point of debate among modern scholars, and she was the granddaughter of the Lynkestian king Argead. Argead himself claimed prestigious descent from the Doric Greek Bacchiads family of Corinth. This Corinthian connection is of monumental significance, carrying a profound psychological weight that would echo generations later in the grand strategy of her youngest son. The mountain kings of Lynkestis did not consider themselves crude northwestern highlanders. They proudly and fiercely traced their direct lineage back to the Bacchiads. The Bacchiads were the elite, highly cultured royal clan that had ruled Corinth centuries prior, during the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, before being violently overthrown and driven into exile by the tyrant Cypselus. When those ancient exiles fled, a prominent branch of their bloodline migrated north into the rugged crags of Upper Macedonia, carrying their burning Corinthian pride, their elite identity, and the memory of their stolen home with them into the mountains. This directly illuminates the poetic historical closure of why Philip II, after smashing the southern Greek armies at Chaeronea in 338 BCE, bypassed old power centers like Athens, Thebes, or Sparta and intentionally chose Corinth as the birthplace for his grand pan-Hellenic alliance, the League of Corinth. Standing on the isthmus in 337 BCE to dictate terms to the entire Greek world, Philip was not just a lowland Macedonian conqueror standing in a foreign city. Through the veins of his mother Eurydice, the blood of the ancient Bacchiad kings ran directly through him. He had returned to their ancestral soil, transforming a centuries-old family displacement into the ultimate seed of imperial power. This unique lineage positioned Eurydice directly at the volatile intersection of Macedonian, Illyrian, and Greek cultural spheres, making her a highly valuable asset in the complicated landscape of regional diplomacy. To truly understand the geopolitical landscape of the ALEXEIN saga, we must carefully dissect the complex ethnic, cultural, and political dividing lines that separated the Lynkestians and the Illyrians. While southern Greek writers from Athens or Thebes often lazily lumped all northern peoples together as mere undifferentiated barbarians, the lowlands of Pella, the mountains of Lynkestis, and the tribal confederacies of Illyria represented completely distinct political entities. Their shifting alliances, brutal blood feuds, and distinct military structures forged the razor-thin line between Argead survival and total annihilation. The Lynkestians, the mountain vanguard of Upper Macedonia. The Lynkestians, the Lynkestae, meaning the people of the Lynx, inhabited Lynkestis, a critically strategic mountainous territory east of the Lakes in Upper Macedonia, bordering modern-day Bedalia. First, let us look at their bloodline and identity. Unlike the lowland Argead Macedonians who ruled from Pella, The royal house of Lynkestis claimed descent from the Bacchiads, an elite exiled aristocratic clan from the highly cultured Greek city of Corinth. This Corinthian lineage gave the Lynkestian monarch an immense sense of dynastic pride. They viewed the lowland Argead kings not as their natural masters but as mere peers and often as crude rivals. Second, their language and culture were distinct. Modern classical scholarship and archaeological excavations confirm that the Lynkestians spoke a Northwest Greek dialect and fully worshipped the traditional gods of the Greek pantheon. They were a tough, pastoral, semi-nomadic mountain people, hardened by brutally cold, rain-heavy winters. Because life in the high altitudes was a constant matter of basic survival, they were natural, fierce guerrilla fighters. Third, look at their role as a geopolitical buffer state. Lynkestis sat squarely on the physical entry point for tribal movements, marching into central Macedonia. It controlled vital east-west transport routes and narrow mountain passes such as the Sangan Pass. This geography made Lynkestis a permanent political pendulum. When the Argead kings in Pella grew too tyrannical or demanding, the Lynkestian kings would instantly forge military alliances with the fierce Illyrian tribes to their west to keep the Argeads in check. The Illyrians, the indomitable western predators. To the west and northwest of Macedonia lay the sprawling territory of the Illyrians. The Illyrians were not a single, unified empire, but rather a massive, highly volatile collection of independent tribes such as the Taulantiae, Dardani, and Dassaridae, who shared a distinct linguistic and material culture. First, consider the rise of King Bardalus. For decades, the Illyrians were defined by decentralized tribal warfare. Everything changed with the rise of Bardalus around the turn of the 4th century BCE. Bardalus was not born into royalty. Ancient records note he began his life as a humble charcoal burner and coal miner. He seized absolute power through raw military merit, winning the unyielding loyalty of Illyrian warriors by dividing the spoils of war with absolute mathematical fairness. Second, their military innovation was revolutionary for the region. Under Bardalus, the Illyrians transformed from a disorganized raiding force into a highly disciplined, terrifying war machine. Crucially, Bardalus adopted Greek hoplite equipment and tactical formations far earlier than his northern neighbors. He combined the heavy defensive armor of the hoplite with the traditional ferocious speed and shock tactics of native Illyrian infantry, developing a devastating defensive infantry square. Third, they became the dominant hegemon. Long before Philip II re-engineered the world, Bardalus and his Illyrians were the undisputed apex predators of the Balkans. They repeatedly smashed the Molossians of Epirus, twice drove King Amyntas III out of Macedonia entirely, and forced the Argead crown to pay a humiliating annual silver tribute to ensure Pella wasn't burned to the ground. The dynamic intersection, alliances, betrayals, and the crucible of Pella. The intersection of Lynkestian diplomacy and Illyrian military might is what continuously drove the Argead dynasty to the brink of extinction. Look at the anti-Argead axis. Whenever an Argead king tried to forcefully annex Upper Macedonia, Lynkestis, and Illyria would interlock. A prime historical example occurred in 423 BCE during the Peloponnesian War, when the Spartan general Brasidas and King Perdiccas II of Macedon attempted to invade Lynkestis. Mid-campaign, the Illyrians suddenly switched sides, joining forces with the Lynkestians. The combined fury of the Lynkestian-Illyrian vanguard struck such terror into the low-country Macedonian troops that they panicked and fled in the night, leaving the legendary Spartan hoplites entirely exposed and forcing Brasidas into a desperate fighting retreat. This brings us to the bloodline convergence in Queen Eurydice I to secure a desperate peace after years of crushing defeats. King Amyntas III married Eurydice around 390 BCE. Her exact heritage perfectly embodies the cross-cultural frontier. Her father was Cyrus, a high-ranking ruler heavily tied to the Lynkestian throne, while her maternal bloodline linked her directly to the Illyrian ruling elite under Bardalus. By placing a woman of mixed Lynkestian-Illyrian blood at the absolute center of the Pella court, Amyntas III hoped to buy safety for his kingdom. Instead, he introduced the razor-sharp survival instincts of the mountain tribes directly into the Argead royal nursery. Her sons, Alexander II, Perdiccas III, and Philip II, grew up with the unyielding, fierce heritage of Lynkestis and Illyria pumping directly through their veins. This cycle of northern vulnerability was broken only when Philip II took the throne. After ascending in 359 BCE, following the catastrophic battlefield death of his brother Perdiccas III, who was slain alongside 4,000 Macedonians by Bartolus Philip, knew he had to permanently solve the western frontier. At the epic Battle of Argead Valley in 358 BCE, Philip's newly trained sarissa-wielding phalanx collided head-on with Bartolus's veteran Illyrian square. In a vicious melee, Philip's heavy cavalry smashed the Illyrian flank, leaving over 7,000 Illyrians dead, including the 90-year-old Bartolus himself. With that single, clinical stroke, Philip II officially annexed Lynkestis into the unified kingdom of Macedon. To cement his total dominance over the border, he founded the heavily fortified garrison city of Makāula Nakae, right in the heart of their old territory, turning the historic gateway of Illyrian invasion into an unbreakable shield for his empire. In the overarching architecture of ALEXEIN, the Lynkestians and Illyrians are not mindless, generic enemies standing in the background. They are the highly intelligent, tactically sophisticated sovereigns of the High Country who forced the Argead dynasty to either completely revolutionize its approach to warfare or die. A strategic marriage and political acumen. Her marriage to Amyntas III, executed around 390 BCE, was not based on personal passion, but served as a critical, high-stakes strategic alliance. Amyntas III ascended the throne during a time of intense civil conflict and crushing external pressures, especially from the powerful Illyrians to the west. By marrying Eurydice I, a princess from Lynkestis, Amyntas sought to accomplish three critical goals. First, he needed to secure his northwestern frontier. Lynkestis lay strategically positioned between Illyria and lowland Macedon. A marital alliance with its ruling family was intended to create an effective buffer against Illyrian incursions. Second, he aimed to consolidate his internal power. The marriage brought Amyntas the political backing of powerful Upper Macedonian noble factions, significantly strengthening his domestic position against rival claimants who routinely tried to usurp the throne. Third, he had to produce legitimate heirs. In a highly competitive, polygamous Macedonian court where succession was frequently contested, securing heirs from a high-status queen was paramount to the dynasty's long-term stability. Despite the profound challenges of her early life and the turbulent, violent nature of Macedonian court dynamics, Eurydice proved to be a queen of remarkable resilience and sharp political acumen. Unlike many royal women of her era, she did not simply fade into domestic obscurity after her husband's death. She outlived Amyntas III, who passed away around 370 or 369 BCE, and remained an exceptionally influential and active force in the Macedonian court for many years, surviving deep into Philip II's early reign. Her influence was so significant that she is recorded as actively participating in external state affairs, an unprecedented level of public involvement for a Macedonian queen. Her most brilliant political action occurred when she went out to meet the Athenian general Iphicrates, urging him to defend her young son's interests against predatory throne claimants like Pausanias. This calculated move highlights her intelligence, her resolve, and the vital role she played in single-handedly protecting the Argead dynasty's future during a period of structural instability. Her lasting legacy is not merely as a passive mother of kings, but as a sovereign queen who actively fought for and shaped Macedon's destiny, reclaiming the queens of the vanguard. In Athenian historical fiction, are among moralizing theatrical writers, the queen mother conveniently disappears the moment their dynastic soap opera ends. But when we look at the real-world historical record, a far more dignified reality emerges. Eurydice did not vanish in disgrace. Instead, she retired into a deeply spiritual, honored life as the matriarch of the realm. While the exact year of her death remains unrecorded, historical consensus indicates she passed away quietly, sometime in the 350s BCE, well before the diplomatic trials of 343 BCE, leaving behind magnificent archaeological traces. When archaeologists excavated the royal tombs at Vergina, they discovered her magnificent marble throne hidden within her final resting place. They also recovered inscriptions showing that later in life, she dedicated a monumental statue to Eucleia, the goddess of good repute, celebrating the education and military victories of her sons. She lived to see her youngest son, Philip, transform Macedonia into an absolute regional powerhouse. There is simply no way I can view her through Justin's compromised lens. His narrative was entirely fueled by hostile Athenian propaganda and a deep-seated institutional misogyny that routinely sought to devalue powerful women. A bias we see repeated later in how ancient writers slandered Queen Olympias. In the ALEXEIN saga, I am passionately committed to writing these queens and the women behind these monumental conquests as humanly, dynamically, and clinically as possible. We explore their authentic life struggles, the structural challenges they faced, and how they successfully navigated a world surrounded by men who were entirely consumed by battle, conquest, and absolute power games. The women who lived, fought, and survived in this era deserve genuine acknowledgement, proper academic attention, and accurate historical recognition. The ALEXEIN saga ensures we do not write through the distorted perspective of ancient Southern fiction or restrictive traditional biases. Women absolutely deserve their full share of the light, stepping out from the long shadow of men's conquests. Tune in for our next daily drop tomorrow as we continue to dissect the bloodlines of antiquity. ALEXEIN, a great Argead saga. Volume 1, Telesias, the War Dance. Unearth the ultimate historical drama. We are releasing a brand new episode every single day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 15 to 45-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, the perfect daily plunge into the ancient world. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias Playlist. Volume 2, Sacred Band, and bookmark Divine Oracle, Volume 1 Playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead Dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below. Was Queen Mother Eurydice I's decision to align with Ptolemy of Aluros, after the assassination of her eldest son, an act of sheer political survival, to shield her remaining children from the Upper Macedonian pretenders? Or was it a cold, calculating consolidation of power that permanently stained her legacy in the eyes of the lowland loyalists? Let me know your structural breakdowns in the comments below.